Sometimes you have to go through the fire to be liberated.
There's a point of reflection on the other side where you feel like this sense of like, oh my God, it wasn't that big of a deal.
At first, your mind can't even entertain it.
Yeah.
And then you move a little bit and you're like, whoa. And it's like you open up all these possibilities.
So you learn a lot about yourself by walking through the fire, and it is a liberating feeling.
Yeah. Somebody's got to go first, and why not you, to break that norm and make it acceptable.
And with that, you attract people that like that.
Yes, exactly.
I was really freaking like shaking in my boots, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be vulnerable and honest and open about what I'm experiencing right now.
We're not going to pretend that we are these perfect beings, because it's just not true.
A lot of people got emotional, but I was like, oh my God.
And then I like saw you like scurry away, and I was like, oh, okay, all right, see ya.
When you accept the judgment of others, you liberate yourself to not have to even like live up to an expectation.
Yeah. Everybody that you know, would think is like this flawless being who doesn't experience fear, like, no, like they are feeling it too.
Yeah.
They've just changed the way they relate to it, and the way that they master moving through it is by
Hello guys, welcome back in to the pod. We're doing another in-person episode here today. If you're watching, look at our new setup. We moved some plants. We're in a forest.
we're in my house kitchen thing.
A very beautiful house.
Thank you.
A very beautiful house. Yeah, so if you're watching also on Spotify, forget that we have visual aspect.
You'll see us, and you'll see that we're really toasty.
Yeah. Tan. We've been
Borderline burnt.
baking outside. I feel like yours already turned into tan though.
Yeah. I mean, my nose and forehead is a little crispy.
No, but even that, it marinated.
It's a sleigh? Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
it's a sleigh, period. Yeah, I came here with one goal and one goal only.
You're like, fuck our to-do list. I'm going to lay outside.
I just really want to get a base tan for Europe so that I'm
Pre-tan.
not like...
Totally.
And then I like look cute in my outfits and it's this whole thing.
Feeling the glow. Love it.
Yeah, I just feel better when I'm tan. So anyway, welcome in, guys. This is going to be a very beautiful episode. We have a lot to discuss in terms of, I want to say opening up the throat chakra, but I also feel like there's going to be other topics that come into play here around how facing the deepest fears that we have and like the resistance that comes up, whether it be through the act of self-expression or expressing your voice, there's this like feeling of I'm not ready that arises in the body where we think, okay, once I get over this feeling and once this feeling goes away, then I will execute on the thing. I will express myself in this way. I will share this thing that's wanting to come out of my throat, out of my voice, out of my mouth. And I'm here to share some personal stories about opening up my own throat chakra, and it still has been an ever-evolving process for me. And the reason why this topic is so activated right now for me personally is because yesterday we hosted a Leo New Moon workshop call, and I have not in a very long time faced this feeling of having a dysregulated nervous system when I was speaking in a way that blocked my throat chakra to the point where I couldn't even say what I was trying to say, and my brain stopped working, and I felt myself go into like an intense feeling of fight or flight while I was on this call, hosting this call with Bella. And it's interesting. We were together, which we're not normally together for these calls. So I think, together in person. So I think us sitting next to each other added a different dynamic to teaching and being on a call that I wasn't prepared for in a way. But I want to share some personal stories around this act of opening up the throat chakra, facing your fears with speaking and sharing your truth, because I have been on a very deep journey of this. Like, over the past few years of me starting my coaching business and speaking online and sharing my voice and being able to give a speech at my sister's wedding and feel good about it. I've been on this journey of facing my deepest fear. And one of my deepest fears was public speaking for the longest time. Like, I can remember when I was working my 9-to-5 job, it was something that was holding me back in a way where I could not perform at my job because I could not get on a phone call in front of many people and speak to the client in the way that I was meant to. And even in school, I remember it being a really big issue for me. And I remember I would be strategic about the classes that I signed up for in high school based on like the end of the year projects that I knew they had. And I remember specifically going to my senior year English teacher. Bless her soul. We had such a beautiful relationship because I actually ended up having her for more than 1 year. And I remember going to her before the start of senior year. It was like the end of junior year. And I was like, hey, I want to take your class, but I don't want to do that presentation at the end. And she was just such a gem. She didn't force me to do it. She was like, I would love for you to be in my class. Why don't you just present it to me by yourself at the end of the year? And she like let me not do it in front of the class, which now that I'm looking back on it, maybe just pushing myself off the edge would have been the start of the process earlier for me. But divine timing, everything unfolded exactly how it was meant to. I have been on this journey of like overcoming this really deep fear to the point where I have hosted many workshops and group coaching programs, and I'm able to get on these calls and feel very relaxed and totally fine in my body. And yesterday, something was different. Like something happened where old feelings came up. And it's almost like that snowball effect of when you start to feel yourself dysregulated, you start to think about how dysregulated you are, and then your mind is spiraling and you're going into this cycle where you can't seem to like catch yourself. And this happened live in front of the Omis in our community membership. And I was just facing these demons inside because the entire call, listen to the freaking irony of this, was about authentic expression and unleashing your inner roar. And it was a Leo new moon call about confidence, and I was hosting this call about confidence. And I had that narrative in my head of like, how the fuck are you tripping right now over your words when you are meant, literally the words coming out of my mouth was about how we're going to unleash our confidence and like let our throat chakra open and burn down the barriers that stand in our way. So I found myself just like taking a beat back. I ended up taking my laptop out of the room that Bella was in because I just couldn't be in the same.
Can I just tell you
what?
When that like the call started, there's sometimes at the beginning of any workshop, there's like a little bit of chaos just with like people are entering the Zoom room, you're letting them in from the waiting room. If you're sharing a screen, you're sharing sound. Like there's a couple things you got to like fucking make sure are in order. And I remember I was like trying to make sure that was happening. Then all of a sudden I didn't really realize, but I saw you like left the room and went to the other room, and I was like, oh, okay. And I just like kept going. It took me a second to realize. And then I was like, okay. She's like, gonna take a second, take a beat, like this is fine. But I remember at first I was like, what's that? Oh, okay. Like, you know, cause you're in like the chaos of trying to make sure that the Zoom room is all set up and like welcoming people in. It's always a little clunky. Like there's just the nature of it. And then I like saw you like scurry away, and I was like, oh, okay. All right.
I just leave, go to the airport.
Literally, I was like, okay, bye. No, but
I just knew I needed to take a minute.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I took my stuff out of the room and I just went to the other room, and as soon as I got back on the call, I was like, I think this is all happening for a reason. And like the timing of this was freaking crazy. Like we've hosted a few of these workshop calls, hosted calls. This has not happened in a very long time. And I was like, what better freaking call for this to happen in than the freaking new moon in Leo workshop? Yeah. So I was really freaking like shaking in my boots, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be vulnerable and honest and open about what I'm experiencing right now. And I just told everyone, you know, guys, like I'm dealing with a little bit of like resistance right now with, I forget what I even said. I think I blacked out. But something.
You were just like, I think you were talking and then you paused for a second and you were just opening up about what you were feeling, and you were like, I'm just going to take a beat and take a deep breath for a second.
Yeah.
And he was really like beautiful moment because they could tell that you made a switch where you're like, okay, instead of just trying to like quote unquote power through this, which again, there's like in the grand scheme, there's like the time and place, but then it was like, it made sense to just like be
I don't
like,
know why I'm
you know
getting
what?
emotional.
Yeah, but you just made a decision to be like, you know what? We're fucking talking about this. Like, it's not always like we think that to teach the subjects we want to teach, that we have to be a perfect master of it. And the thing that happened, and this is where it gets even more beautiful, is then everybody else softened in the group and people told you that when you shared that, it made them feel so safe.
Yeah.
And the whole freaking point of like being in a membership like that and this like these calls and workshops that we create for people is like our energy and our openness is what allows other people to feel okay to be uncomfortable or be nervous.
Right.
And if they show up to that call thinking that they have to be this like perfect, like already crushed it, already embodied, no problems here person, you miss out on what wants to be moved through. And it was incredible because you completely like were able to shift the space and allow people to soften into fully receiving. And like, this is the part where like, we are not on pedestals to our fucking community. It's not the point. And should never be the case. And that's why like, we're not going to pretend that we are these perfect beings because it's just not true. And it's like the multidimensionality of, I feel really passionate about this. I know a lot about this, but I'm also like going through it, or at least like it's coming up again for me. That is so real. And you opening and sharing that, like that is what made the call so powerful, is the amount of people that then softened and were like, oh wow, like I view Nikki as this incredible, embodied, authentic, powerful person, and she's also having a moment of doubt or fear or whatever. Like that is it. Like that is what switches it and breaks down barriers for other people to stop waiting to not feel doubt, to take an action or embody their highest self. And like that's the whole point and the message just of this episode specifically, which we're going to keep getting into, is like, you are still, and you know this, is like you are still so capable and worthy and enough. And not that it matters what other people think, but our community sees that in you. I see that in you. So for then you to just own what you're feeling, just like made it all crystallize into like the truth of what the whole fucking point of that experience was, which was to know that like sometimes you have to go through the fire to be liberated. And literally the fire is the discomfort, and the discomfort in front of people in real time. Like that is how you shift it. And that's where people think like, I'm going to wait until I figure this out on my own in the comfort of my own home until I feel peaceful enough or whatever to then go out into the world. And it's like, sometimes you need to go out into the world and survive the fire. Like I guarantee that experience, I mean, you already said this, that experience changed something in you.
Yeah.
In the guided like portion itself that you're able to receive, and the experience of hosting it itself, that was like a version of the fire. And like that's what I was sharing with Nikki the other day when we were talking about this on our own, of like reflecting on my journey. And the thing that helped me really grow in that arena was going through a brutal fire of literally being rejected and like getting literal messages to my face, either through DM or in real life, that were like effed up about like, you're this and you're like whatever it was, or just feeling that like real tension at the workplace from expressing my opinions and whatever it was. Like that's the fire, and you need that, because when you survive that, it changes your cells. And that's what you went through, and you also modeled that to our community. And like that was incredibly powerful. Like if you had just pushed it aside and like, you know, gone through it and not shared that, like, I mean, whatever, everything in divine timing and place and how things happen, but like there's a reason why that came up, and it was so freaking powerful. And it's the whole point of like the bow we're trying to tie together here of like, you don't need to wait to present this perfect form for other people. And to extrapolate it out further, like you are a community leader and a teacher and a guide and a coach, and you're powerful while you also are in your human experience of going through things, and it doesn't take away from it. That's the point too, is like, if anything, it literally adds to it.
Like when you embrace every aspect of who you are.
Yes.
The fullness.
Yes. And that takes the power and charge away from it. Whereas then if somebody else were to ever, say something about it, it doesn't mean anything because you've accepted it. And it's actually really funny. I'm thinking of there's an example in Game of Thrones. We've been watching House of the Dragon, so Game of Thrones is like related to that. And there's this character, Tyrion Lannister. If you watch the show, you know who I'm talking about. He's like I don't know what they call him in it, a dwarf. He's like extremely short. Like he's like his growth is stunted or whatever. He's like what's the proper name for that? A dwarf?
I think so.
A midget? I don't know if is that incorrect to call it. I don't think you could call people that.
No.
Sorry. I don't know what the word is. I'm not trying to label anyway, in the show he talks about how like in his world people make fun of him for that. And he talks about how if you like accept it and like reclaim it, nobody can use it against you.
Yeah.
And it's like the similar idea of like when you embrace your multidimensionality and accept all parts of you, then nobody could ever hold that against you and it won't ever work against you.
There's something really powerful too about speaking it out, because when we have shadows or fears and we keep them in the darkness and we like almost are in denial that we're facing these subconscious perceptions about certain things that cause the physical manifestation of a dysregulated nervous system or fear, when you resist that, it persists. Like it's that classic saying of what you resist will persist. Mm-hmm. And I noticed the second that I spoke it out to the group of like, hey, 1 second, like I'm really dealing with X, Y, and Z, and this is my journey of opening up my throat chakra. The second I spoke that out, it lost its power. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really beautiful lesson, that whenever you have some sort of fear, whether it be the fear of public speaking or the fear of facing anything or doing something, just let it out, share it with someone. Like even talking about it with you after was like, holy crap, it's not as powerful as my body is thinking it is. And I have been on a really deep journey of this to the point where I even brought myself to Toastmasters in 2022, where I would go and force myself to public speak in front of a classroom of lovely people, like literally the dopest, most genuine, kind humans that are just all on the same journey of getting over the fear of public speaking.
Wow.
And I went there because I was giving a speech at my sister's wedding that summer. So I started going like probably like 5 months, maybe 4 months before, and I would go every week. And I started to, they give out like awards at the end, and I started to like win a lot of awards.
Wow.
And they still are hanging up. There's one on our fridge right now, and I actually have a video of me getting an award and then going back to my car after to go home, and I was crying in the car because I couldn't believe that I had brought myself to a point of being able to like give a speech in front of a group of people and actually win the award of like the best spoken. And there was someone who would keep track of like how many times you said and I like really made sure to like practice that. And it was just a whole journey where I was like, you know what? This fear is not going to hold me back any longer, because I could see in my third eye that my timeline and my reality involves opening up my throat in a major way. Like I did not choose this reality of like getting on a mic and like one day we're going to be on a stage. Like this was like, I can tell you deep within my core, it almost feels like a soul assignment because I would not have chosen this. Like I would have taken the freaking easy path of like, okay, I can do this and stay in the shadows and keep my voice freaking closed, my throat closed. And it almost was like, you are going to be on this path where you are going to face every deep fear you have. And I always say your soul meticulously places your deepest desires right on the other side of your deepest fears, because that's what we come here to shed and to learn about ourselves. And you freaking learn about yourself when you walk through the fire. So every time I would go to that class, the Toastmasters class, I would start small and work my way up to speaking for longer amounts of time, to the point where the last session I did my speech. And every single time I started to learn a little bit more about what that discomfort was sharing and what it was believing and why I was feeling that. And it boiled down to me having this whole awakening around the fear of being perceived in a certain light or being rejected, and having to like obtain this, I don't know if it was like, I don't know how to word it, but it's almost like my mind believed that I had to be perceived in a specific way by every single person in the room, or else my safety is at risk. And it's a very interesting thing when you actually just say that and realize how irrational it is. And yesterday on the call, I think us being together like added a different element of like, my nervous system wasn't used to that, and there was just like a lot of excitement, and I think the excitement was confused with anxiety as well, just because we were so pumped up and so excited to host our first workshop in person. But yeah, I definitely want to share with you that when you guys like go walk into the fire and face that discomfort, there's a point of reflection on the other side where you feel like this sense of like, oh my God, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like, I'm just now recognizing there's a part of my psyche that thinks X, Y, and Z. And you start to realize how irrational that is. And this is where the work of subconscious healing has changed my freaking life. Like, I would not have been able to actually become aware of what the discomfort was telling me without having all the knowledge that I have on subconscious healing and going down that path of working with a subconscious healing coach and then specializing in that myself. I was really on a journey of learning about how to actually heal those subconscious perceptions and how to also become aware of what they are. So you learn a lot about yourself by walking through the fire, and it is a liberating feeling.
Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's like that combo of the self-awareness and the action of not waiting for anything else to go through it. And that's what does it. That's the formula, if you will. Hey guys, we're going to take a very quick break from this episode because I want to share with you something amazing that Nikki and I just launched, which is the Om Activations Vault. These activations are your speedboat to that desired frequency, emotion, feeling, or thing that you want to embody. In the world of manifestation, we sometimes get lost in the sauce and we're not sure exactly what we should be doing, how much meditation, how do I access this feeling, how do I magnetize things to me? And the key is to understand the ultimate embodiment and mastery of these certain frequencies that start to unfold and magnetize other things into our life. So these activations are going to help you to actually access that thing in the now, learn how to feel it, learn how to embody it, and how to match up your actions to that thing. So each activation comes with an integration activity. Some of them are 30-day challenges. Some of them are a ritual that you can practice and do daily or weekly. And they're all intended to bring that frequency into your day-to-day. So you start off by understanding it conceptually, mastering the concept, the theory of whatever that frequency or topic is. Then you go into actually experiencing it in the now through very powerful guided meditations. Some of them are breath and sound journeys, visualizations that help you to experience that from the inside. And then you integrate it, take action on it, and actually hold it in your day-to-day life, because that's the point, is to hold the frequency, be a big enough being to experience what it is that you desire. So for example, if you are feeling like you're blocked in your expression, or you're fearing judgment, or you want to really let your authentic self out, let it rip, but you're just not sure how to get there, then Activate Authenticity would be the perfect thing for you. Right now, you can use the code POD15, POD15, to get 15% off any of the activations inside the vault. And if you're a member of the Oasis, you actually get 50% off of one activation per month. And the code for that is always in our Slack channel, so make sure you check that out. As always, thank you so much for being here, for listening, for being a part of this community. We love you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Yeah, I think the other thing that this really inspired was just remembering like that aspect of not waiting for the doubt to go away, and remembering like the freaking top CEOs, the people that you look up to that you think are these like perfect people that figured it all out. Like, they still have self-doubt. They still have their off days. They still have things that trigger them. And definitely people evolve and grow the way that they relate to those doubts. But I would say it's pretty rare that they're just completely non-existent. And it's not to say like you're not ever going to improve or like diminish them. But the point is like those things still exist. And the people that you think are perfect are just human. And you also start to see that as true the more that you remove them from the pedestal, and then also let yourself take actions and keep moving forward, keep moving the needle forward. And then you're like, oh, wow, like I can do this thing even with the doubt or the fear, whatever it is present. And then you start to realize like that person is also doing the same thing and they don't have anything that I don't, other than like, you know, everybody has their unique genius. But the point being, everybody that you know, would think is like this flawless being who doesn't experience fear, like, no, like they are feeling it too.
Yeah.
They've just changed the way they relate to it, and they've improved that sort of like a mastery of moving through it. And the way that they master moving through it is by moving through it every time at every level. And also it's like the levels just change. Like I always think about these examples of people that I really just enjoy watching their journey, and there's always comes to mind is Aubrey Winters. Shout out to Aubrey Winters. She's been one of my biggest inspirations for the past like 4 years as I have like gone on my own ventures and expanded all the things I do. And she is an incredible example of someone who continues to like up level and manifest her vision, but shares openly and vulnerably how like the shape of the animal just changes. So it's like she started out as doing just like online live Zoom classes or teaching like fitness classes literally on IG Live, to then having her own online fitness studio platform, an app, a community. Like she would do challenges and workshops and all the things. And now she's opening up her own fitness studio in Chicago. Mind you, she just had a baby a month ago and is like on a journey of sharing. She's like shares moments where she's like, I have days where I'm like, what the hell am I doing? This is crazy. I can't handle this. And then she has days where she was like, no, this is what's meant to happen. Like I can do this. But she has always shared how at every single level, like, yes, she gets more confident, stronger, more capable, but it's like, imagine it's like you're just dealing with different levels of the shape that doubt takes on. Like she's opening up a studio in Chicago, and that's a whole different level of financial management and investment. She has a kid now, like she works with her husband, she's hiring teachers. Like you don't get to that unless you work through the doubt that's at your level right now and in your reality. And then you will do that and you execute on that big project and big vision, and you're going to be able to handle it. But it's like, we have to not kid ourselves by thinking that we are going to wait for that to go away, because that's how you never start and you never do the thing, is by thinking like, oh, they must have it sorted out. They probably are whatever different than I am. And it's like, no, they're not. And if you want to really solidify that, find those expanders in your life. Like, I mean, I wrote down a list of people I'm always being inspired by and reminded about this power. And it's like Aubrey Winters, Sadie Simone is an incredible example of this. Like he's a potent, incredible spiritual teacher and has been incredibly vulnerable about the grief that he went through with losing his mother. And also he's like the most unhinged. He's like twerking in his underwear,
cursing.
Cursing, like, and it's just like incredible. I love that, because then that sets a new norm of what we think is okay and possible with success. Another person would be Chris Corsini, my favorite freaking astrologer. Shout out to Chris. And he's like the most just dropping like F-bombs and bitch in the freaking like monthly astrology reading he does for every sign. And he's so silly and himself, and he also slays and runs an incredible business, has an in-person studio like wellness thing in Lisbon, and like incredible. And every time I look at him, I'm like, see, you don't need to be this avatar to be successful.
Polished,
and you can and it's also up to you. Like if you want to be more polished and you really love that, do it and find expanders that do that. But like if you want to feel permission to be more unpolished or what, it doesn't even matter what you label it, just whatever you identify with, and you want to see someone who's doing that and is breaking the norm, find those people. Like another person I would say is Emma Zek. I've always really admired, because she is totally redefining what it means to be a singer and an artist who's, you know, performing and making music, but she's also a women's coach, and she's also so freaking liberated and like the most don't give a fuck. And I love it, because again, it keeps expanding me. And it's just that point of like, the norms don't change until someone has the audacity to go and change it, right? Like there's so many, you could look back at history and think like, oh, it was not normal for women to ever show like their nipples, right? Like in terms of through their shirt, like that would be like,
and now there's nipple bras.
And now there's nipple bras that literally you wear a bra and it has a fake
nipple. Yep.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like, and there's still taboos around it. It's to people who don't accept it. But the point is, like, somebody's got to go first, and why not you, to break that norm and make it acceptable. That happens across every industry where nobody thought it'd be okay. No, you can't do that. That's way too taboo. Like, think about like Michael Jordan established this idea of athletes, and now it's like, honestly, I think you could attribute like influencers getting a percentage of the brands that they work with. So Michael Jordan got this insane deal with Nike, with the shoe, the Air Jordans, and it was unheard of that an athlete would get a percentage of the sales of the product. He freaking changed the game for that. And it was because he had the audacity, and his family had the audacity to ask for that in the deal. And everybody was like, that literally doesn't happen. Like, you're dreaming. Now it's the norm. Like,
yeah.
It's just like, if you wait, and I don't know if it's a little bit of a stretch what I'm saying now, but I feel like it's related, and just understanding that what we think is acceptable a lot of the times is honestly so subjective and just based on what we have all collectively agreed. And that only changes when somebody takes the first step to say, I'm going to do it this way because this is authentic to me and this is what I want to do. And if I'm the first, so be it. But like, people are going to follow, and it will change. It will break the chain. It will break the pattern, and there will be a new norm established.
And you attract a more liberated representation of a reality or your life. Because if you think about those that are breaking those norms and really just doing what feels good to them, that's them unleashing an authentic energy within that used to be maybe more confined or restricted, or there was boundaries against. And it's like breaking those molds allows them to be more of them, like the fullness of who they are. And with that, you attract people that like that and love that.
Yes,
and then
exactly.
That inspires something within them. And I think about Chris, because I feel like he really is such an activator for me as well. When I'm watching his astrology readings, like, you think about all these like spiritual teachers, and it's like everyone's trying to fit this like mold of a spiritual person, and you have to be perfect and do all this stuff, when in reality, like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Literally, no, you don't.
Right.
And I think this is a really big journey I'm going on right now. And everything with that call of what happened on the workshop yesterday was the fucking iceberg, like the tip of the iceberg for me to finally realize, like, fuck that. Like, fuck that. I've been taking a little bit of a break from Instagram just because I've been feeling bored as hell on the app. Like, with producing content, it doesn't really feel as flowy, and I almost feel like I was watching too many, like, if you're a coach, make content like this, and just every day post content like this, make a video, make this graphic, da da da. And it was draining me. Like, I think some people can sustain just fitting themselves in that mold. But for me, I know I'm meant to be liberated in a way where my creative expression actually fuels me, like fuels me to the point where, like, when I make a video, it's like, fuck, that was life-giving. And now I get to just share it. And there's no attachment to any sort of metric, because that was for me and also for the people that it resonates with. And if it's one person, if it's 1,000 people, great. And for some reason, I've found a lot easier flow on TikTok of just being able to like make a video, post it, not give a fuck. I feel like very detached on that app, and it has definitely suited my journey. But even on there, like, I'm ready to share more of just like the fullness of who I am. And I've always said this, but then like held myself back. Like, I remember I posted a video on TikTok of like, I'm going to share more of my personal life. And then when it comes to what I'm doing and sharing a video, it's like, nah, who's going to care about this? Like, why am I showing this? They only want to hear this. Or like, don't say that because then you're going to ruin this. Like, all these weird thoughts that come up. But I think what I'm really gaining from being on this journey and having all these realizations is like, fuck it. Literally, fuck it. I'm at that point of just being like, what do you have to lose? Just be you and share more of you, and you don't have to be anyone but yourself. And I think it's important for us to talk about the judgment aspect here, because we had a really powerful conversation after the call where I kind of was still releasing and feeling a lot of emotions, and Bella was holding me and just like giving me so much grace and compassion, and really guiding me on just a moment of reflection of how I can shift this even deeper. And this practice of neutralizing things is what Bella has been teaching me, and we spoke about it in the last episode and the episode before. And I think it's important to bring it up here too, because we haven't really talked about it in this context of like judgment. But do you want to explain like what you shared with me and the prompts you gave me?
Yeah. So for context, in case you missed any of this conversations in previous episodes, but this idea of neutralizing something, the origin is, I learned it from a friend who learned it from this guy, Dr. John DeMartini. And I mean, it's not necessarily like he came up with the concept, but the idea is there's this method where in order to have these big breakthroughs with things that we are experiencing in life, you identify the thing, the goal, the experience that has a big charge to it. So for example, it's like the idea of being judged is like if you think about that and it feels really scary and you're like, I don't want to experience that.
Or rejected.
Rejected. And you just can feel that like your brain and body do not want to go there. And it can be the opposite too. Like a good example I've talked about before is with money, of like this idea of if I make money, like that's the best thing ever. It will solve my problems, right? It has a big positive charge that actually ends up kind of messing with the energy. So with being judged or rejected or criticized, when that has a big sort of fear around it or a rejection of that happening, you do this exercise of neutralizing it, which is basically to, through logic, start to convince yourself of the opposite case. So for example, you already for sure would agree, or let's say as an example, you're at a point in time, you have this framework in your mind that being judged is bad. You do not want that to happen. Rejection is bad. You're not safe if you're rejected. Being judged is no bueno. Okay. That's like, you're like convinced of that. So what you would do is you start to flip the script and you start to point out all of the good things that come from being judged or rejected. And you would flip it to where you could say, what are the bad or not good bad or, negative things about being accepted and being liked across the board. And so you start to flip, and what happens is at first your brain is not going to be able to come up with what is the good version of it. So when I ask you like, what is a good outcome from being judged or rejected, you'll probably come up with like one or two things, and then you're gonna be like, I got nothing else. So then in terms of how this works is I, as like the person helping you, because I'm a little more removed from it, I can seed some more ideas. That starts to open your mind, and then you'll start to list like 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 good things. And because of that, you're starting to reduce the charge that was once there around this idea of being judged or rejected. And you just basically like convince yourself through logic that actually like this is totally fine. And the bigger picture here is you end up just coming to a place of neutrality where being judged is neither good nor bad. It just is the thing that happens, and we choose how we relate to it. So it's very powerful, because if that is the main thing, in the roadblock or the thing you're avoiding, or if it's like the money thing and you're trying to make money and you only see it as positive, the energetics around that thing completely change, and you end up being able to tap into the states of gratitude or presence or acceptance. And from there, you can express yourself in this case, or experience potentially being judged or rejected, and it won't have the same effect on you. And then what's really cool is your ability to express becomes so much easier and almost happens more effortlessly, because you've removed the strong charges around it.
Right. And I've said this in the other episodes too, but I just want to reiterate it here, that when something is so heavily charged, it's because you're creating a sense of self from an outcome. Like if you're looking at yourself as like a 100% filled circle, it's like you're only at 50%, but this thing outside of you is so charged because you think it's the thing that either brings you lower or higher in that percentage. And by neutralizing it, you're recognizing that it actually doesn't have that impact. It doesn't have to have that impact. And you can feel 100% with or without it.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to know that these moments of feeling supercharged about things can fluctuate in your life. And even for me, with the fear of judgment, it's like when I'm oscillating, like we have these ego soul oscillations where sometimes we're like super tapped into the point where we're not even feeling any discomfort. We're like fucking fearless, super magnetic. And then you have moments of life where you're just more in like, you're feeling, you're more aware of like those perceptions. Maybe the psyche is like activating more of those deep subconscious programs. And you're like, what the fuck? I thought I worked on this shit 2 years ago.
Right.
And it's just another opportunity to look at something that's coming up that was just a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I had such a heavy emotional release, because it was like, oh my God, whew, I didn't even realize that was back there. Like
Right.
going into this little bit of a ego oscillation, like it's so divine because you actually can become aware of what those things are that are supercharged in your life that may have just been a little bit, have fallen to the background. Mm-hmm. And I want to give some of the examples of what I was sharing on the good aspects of being judged, the positive aspects of being judged, because it actually really helped me. Like
Yeah.
I feel so different. Of course, there was the energetic release of me doing the breath work that we were doing in the workshop, and the what's this breath work called?
Bastrika or
Yeah.
bellows breath.
We did a meditation in the workshop, and here I am thinking I'm like hosting the workshop, and I like freaking went in when it was Bella's turn to guide the breath work. We were switching on and off between when we were guiding the meditation and breath work, and it was really powerful for me. And during the breath session at the end, we were like burning down the barriers and like really breaking through those fears, and I was bawling my eyes out. A lot of people got emotional, but I was like, oh my God. And yeah, so then I had that big emotional release, and then we did this judgment practice, neutralization practice after the fact, like after the call. And some of the things that I listed out as good aspects of being judged, I mean, I needed Bella's help because your mind is so blocked.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Isn't it cool though to see how like at first you're like your mind can't even entertain it.
Yeah.
And then you move a little bit and you're like, whoa. And it's like you open up all these possibilities.
I think because I was in the emotion too, that it was like I was super blocked.
Yeah.
But
Which is
then-
honestly a good place to be doing it. When I did this exercise with my friend Cody, I was like in tears on her couch. Like it was really hard. And
Yeah.
then like actually the emotions started to like subside through the experience, but carry on.
Yeah. So I had a little bit of difficulty thinking of some things, but with Bella's help, we were just diving into it a little bit more. And some of the things I said were when you're judged, you're able to have a very clear understanding of like who your people are, and you magnetize the things that actually love and respect you, and you will repel the things that like judge you and aren't the best and maybe don't have your best interests at heart. And that's like a really beautiful aspect of judgment, because you're able, it's almost like a filtering system of being able to see, okay, you're just like not my people. And that's totally okay. Not that I'm better, not that you're better. Like we're just living in different types of frequencies, different vibes. And that's totally okay. And then another thing that we were talking about is that judgment actually gives another person a really beautiful opportunity of reflection, because you can like cause such a deep polarization, that's the word I'm trying to say, for someone else, that allows them to have a moment of reflection of like, damn, like when someone judges so deeply another person and then they walk away from the situation, if that person is like the slightest bit self-aware, they'll have a moment of being like, oh my goodness, like why am I so heavily charged towards this thing that someone did that has nothing to do with me?
Right.
Or maybe it does, and
Yeah.
you can rationalize why it is you're judging. But at the end of the day, it's a moment of being like, whoa, okay. I've had moments where I like catch my judgment and I'm like, damn, that shit is a mirror. Mm-hmm. And that's a really beautiful thing with judgment. I forget what the other things we said were. Even right now, I'm like kind of drawing a block, but I know it felt good saying it.
I think we said,
They all were kind of building on top of each
yeah,
other.
there was this aspect of, you're gifting them a moment of being triggered, and that could
I
cause,
remember.
oh,
one.
feedback, that one. The where it's
I remember
actually
another one, so you say that.
Okay, yeah. So basically, another good one is sometimes it's actually good to be judged, because maybe this person or the scenario is giving you really good feedback about how you're presenting or something that you are doing. And like, sometimes we actually want to know if something is coming across a certain way, and it's just nuanced, because it's like, there's things that are like, that just has everything to do with them that they're judging me. But there's also things that maybe like it's like good to know that this caused a response in them, and you can use your discernment to figure out and basically make a change or evolve in a certain way, because you realize the impact it had on somebody else. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. Like, we want to know, like, sometimes judgment serves a good kind of like biological purpose, where, you know, we want to know if we are putting somebody off, and maybe we actually are coming from ego. Like, we didn't realize it, but we're coming from ego, right? Like, if I'm doing something in my relationship and it negatively impacts Milan, or his feelings are hurt, and there's some form of judgment there, like, I want to know that. Like, he, quote unquote, should judge me for like whatever that thing is. And we can also then see how them judging us also doesn't mean that they don't like us or that they reject us. Like, they're not always one and the same. So point being, you can just kind of add more color to the situation of being judged and be like, that isn't necessarily such a negative thing. Like, I actually benefited from knowing that this is how they felt about me, or that they were triggered by this. So again, discernment, because it's like, these are not absolutes. Like, sometimes it's almost, you need to be judged to figure something else out about yourself or about the person or whatever it might be. So feedback, essentially.
It's almost like it shows you the way to not taking what people are judging you for personally.
Yes, exactly.
But another thing that I remember I was talking about is the good aspect of, like, a good aspect of accepting judgment is that when you walk into a room and you just accept the fact that maybe some people are going to judge you and maybe they're not. Maybe it's like literally all in your head, but let's just play with this for a second as a thought experiment. When you accept the judgment of others, you liberate yourself to not have to even like live up to an expectation.
Yeah.
And it kind of breaks down this idea that you have to like perform or reach some sort of status or like be perceived in some way. And you completely eradicate all of that to the point where you're able to like soften into a state of peace. And this is something you brought up on the workshop call, was that at the end where we were like, okay, now like go live this like life of what you just tapped into by releasing what you released. And Bella was reminding everyone that just because it's like Leo new moon and it's all about confidence and like it's a fire sign, confidence is also a relaxing into like a state of peace and just allowing yourself to be. And that actually is where confidence arises from, because confidence doesn't have to be loud and the person that's like screaming in a room or standing on a table at a bar. Sometimes that's actually not confidence, and you can really feel the difference when someone's embodied in the act of being more outspoken or outgoing, or if it's coming from a place of lack. Which again, like, no judgment. Everyone is on their journey of figuring out what feels good to them. But it is really beautiful to know that you don't have to be like the loudest, funniest person in a room. Maybe sometimes you are the loudest and funniest person in the room, and that feels good to you. Like us at dinner the other night.
This is worth a quick side note. We went to dinner the other night with some of our friends.
Just a bunch of spaceship engineers.
Yeah, just a bunch of engineers. And Nikki and I were just like so unhinged.
Buffooning.
We were just like being so silly, cracking jokes. Honestly, it was so fun. Like, one of our friends like just could not stop laughing at the jokes we were making. But anyway, it was like, yeah, we could have like quieted ourselves down because they're gonna. But it's like, whatever, you know. It's like, it was fine.
Yeah, like in that moment, being loud and kind of a little obnoxious was what felt right for us. And I felt very myself and very relaxed. And sometimes it's just sitting in a room and observing people and not speaking. Like, don't equate confidence with talking.
Totally.
Because I think that's another powerful thing. I watched a clip from, I think her name's Eva or Eva. I think Eva. She's a blonde woman that's like in her, I would say 40s, and she was in the Secret Service. She used to protect the president. I don't know which president she was working for. I think Trump, maybe.
I think it was earlier ones like Clinton or something.
Oh,
and
was
Bush,
it?
I think
Yes,
she said.
yes, you're right. But there was a clip of her, and she was just saying, if you don't have anything important to say, don't feel like you have to fill the room.
Yeah.
Like, don't speak.
Totally.
And she was saying how sometimes she'll be in a meeting room and she won't say a word the whole time because she's just observing and picking up information about other people, not in like in a manipulative way, just like a natural way of scanning the room, picking up energy. And some people do that more than others. That would actually be like an interesting like human design thing. I feel like
thinking I'm like projectors would be really good at that.
Yes,
they're just like
he's always
and then they're
scanning
gonna like
the room.
have something really powerful to say when they do speak.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I have to say about that. There's nothing really else on my mind, but I do want to share, just if you guys are resonating with what I'm saying about this fear of public speaking, you can do it. Like, you do not have to be in the jail cell of this fear, and you get to liberate yourself. And if you're feeling the call to be on a career path where it's pushing you in that direction, see it as a really beautiful sign that your soul came here to learn those specific lessons, and you are meant to feel so free. And I'm on this journey too. I'm nowhere near the end of it, but I'm definitely making moves. And there will be a day where Bella and I will sit on a stage looking at each other in our eyes, and I'm going to be like, we fucking did it. And I am going to probably say to the crowd, like, remember episode so-and-so?
Yeah. I have one more thing that I wanted to share, because I think at like the biggest picture kind of mindset and perspective shift you can make about this whole judgment, being judged, rejected thing, is I think then getting to a point where you realize that even thinking that someone is judging you is a judgment on them and the type of person or how they feel about you. And you can basically get to this other end of the spectrum where you start to just assume the best out of the people that are interacting with you. And I started to train myself to do this, where if I noticed like certain people watching my stories, like it would be like hometown friends or something, I think I shared this with you, where I would just be like, maybe they're loving it. Like maybe they're just like super into what I'm sharing and they love the lesson. And like maybe they like, when they saw me at the bar over Thanksgiving, the night before Thanksgiving, they were like, oh, I'd love to see how she's doing. Like I just assumed the best and didn't even like let myself, I would be passing a judgment on them to assume that they're thinking something negatively about me, which is not fair, right? It doesn't feel good the other way around, where if you were like, you're judging me, and I was like, no, I'm literally not. I'm not. Like, I'm really not.
You're like, judging what? I wasn't even paying attention.
Yeah, but it's like, think about that. Like, then I don't want people to think that I'm judging them when I'm really not. Or maybe I'm just observing and thinking about it, but I don't actually feel any way about it. I have my own opinions, but it doesn't mean that I'm like rejecting you. Right. So that's where then you can take it to the whole other level of like, you start to rewire your brain to just assume the best. And at least at that place, it's like, maybe they are thinking something, maybe they're not, but you've just then assumed and created a reality where anybody that's observing you either is just neutral about it, or they actually like are happy to see you and happy to hear from you. And yeah, they were talking about you at a party, but they were saying how nice you are and how expansive your perspective is. There's a video actually of her handle is the Daily Victorian. She's the girl who does like yoga and like gives like life wisdom. I don't know if you've seen her on TikTok. She's also on Instagram. Anyway, she had a video go viral that was like, people were talking about you at the party.
Oh yes, I know.
And they
this
were
girl.
saying how nice you were.
Yeah.
And like that couple that walked by you on the street, they noticed how vibrant you look in your outfit.
Right.
And it was just like, that's it, right? It's just not even assuming that they're thinking something negative about you. So that's both sides of it. It's like, again, neutralizing even the idea of what someone is thinking of, like maybe they are quote unquote judging, or maybe they're literally not. And at the end of the day, no matter what they're thinking, doesn't matter, because it doesn't affect you and your journey and your, expression of yourself.
Yeah. And I think if you start giving that energy outward, you will feel that in the body more too. Like,
yes,
if you're the person that walks by a girl in public and you like tap your friend and you're like, how fucking cute was her outfit? Or like, how stunning was her hair? Like, did you see the shoes she was wearing? Or just like, her energy was so good. Instead of being the person that's like pointing out negative things about people,
right?
It's like you start to fuel that cycle of just like positive, loving, compassionate things that you can observe about people or say about people. And then you just start to assume other people do that as well.
Yes,
and
totally.
this can lead into a whole paradigm of like creating your own reality, and what you put out is what you get back. And we all have the option of how we want to interact with other people and perceive them. And I think compassion is like definitely something that we can all lean into a little bit more, and just showing love and grace for everyone, because we're all navigating this journey in a way that feels good to us, to the best of our abilities.
Yeah. Amen. I think that's huge. That feels like the final piece is you get to a point where if you are actually putting out consistent love and acceptance of others, you will not fear being like judged ultimately. And again, it's not easy to do. We all naturally have this primal instinct sometimes to other or not like, and you're also allowed to not like things. You're allowed to not vibe with a person. But point being, you will experience more of that acceptance when you are working toward that state of being too, which is a journey in of itself.
Yeah. I do want to add one more thing about the Oasis. If you guys are interested, if you're hearing us talk about our membership, we have a community membership that is one of the most beautiful places ever. It is such a safe, welcoming environment. We had a bunch of new members come in, and they hopped on their first call yesterday with the Leo new moon. And everyone was just so welcoming and loving. And in the breakout rooms, like, people were talking to other people, getting to know them. And the Slack community is just such an incredible place. I really am in awe by it every single day. So if you guys are looking for like a super safe, welcoming environment to explore more of your spiritual journey, or even just to meet other people, like, you're not meant to do this alone. And it's kind of insane that we think we're meant to have all these like healing moments and revelations and like seeing reality through a completely different lens than what we used to, all on our own. That is nuts. So like, know that this is a place that you can hop into whenever you're feeling comfortable. Maybe right now it's not what you're feeling guided towards, but just know that that option is always there. And we are always so excited to see new names roll in. And we just can't wait to meet you on our call. So we love you guys so much. Did you have any last words that you wanted to share?
No, I was going to say that then that workshop we're referencing is in the on-demand library of the membership. So if you want to do it yourself, take it self-guided, there's a whole huge growing library of workshops and new moon circles that are incredible. They all have a different unique practice, different like guided meditations, breath journeys, journaling, breakout rooms, all this stuff. So definitely check that out too. And it'll be fun to see you guys in there.
Yeah, I can't wait. Okay, guys, we love you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you next week. We love you. Bye, guys.
Bye.